Bro, I am so sick of people using God in a toxic way in their relationship. And in this video, I'm going to share with you all the different ways that I've heard people use God in a way that really gives me the ick. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, trust me, just keep watching, you'll understand. I think you'll relate to a lot of these things, hopefully not in your relationship, but maybe in the relationships that you've seen. Be sure to watch and listen to the end, because at the end, I'm going to share with you a few quick tips on how to invite Jesus into your relationship in a healthy way. I think most of us have seen a relationship like this. Maybe we've participated in one, or we've seen one of our friends or family members go down this route. It's the man usually promises something idealistic, oh man, we'll get married one day, and we'll throw this wedding, and we'll have these kids, and we'll live in this place, and you're fantasizing about the future with them. Maybe you see your friends go down this route, and they come to you and they're starry-eyed. They have these rose-colored glasses on. They're like, wow, Dustin, he talks about how we're gonna get married and have these kids, and then what happens? Boundaries begin to get crossed. And if you're looking in from the outside, you're like, man, this is not good. Like, what's going on here? And you're crossing those boundaries, and you're crossing more boundaries. And then he comes to you, and he comes to your friend, and he says, you know what? This relationship is not good for my faith. No, it's not good for my faith. God told me to break up with you. God told me to break up with you. Man, I can't tell you what a wuss move this is. Okay, in this instance, okay, who's at fault? The guy's at fault, okay, because he is not leading the woman. He's not actually establishing those boundaries, which is his responsibility to do. And then he's blaming her for separating him from God, and then saying, oh, well, God wants me to break up with you. Man, actually, if there's a reason, if it's truly not good for your faith, say, hey, look, I lack in maturity. I lack in spiritual fortitude, and that's why I need to break up with you, because you don't deserve a guy like me, because I need to get my stuff together. That's the truth. But if there's another reason too, just own up to it. Don't over spiritualize it. Just be honest about it. Say, hey, you know what? I don't think our values align, or I don't know if our personalities really click, and I just see you as more of a friend. Like, or don't even say that. If you don't see them as a friend, just be honest and say, hey, I don't think we're going to work out. And just be honest. But people use God as a scapegoat because they don't want to face the music, and because they don't want to face the promises and the heartbreak that they've created. And in using God as a scapegoat, they can almost come off as virtuous, like, oh, I'm a spiritual guy, and so that's why I need to break up with you. Or even girls do this too. But the reality is, man, there's nothing virtuous about that. Matthew 5, verse 37 says, let what you say be simply yes or no. Anything more than this comes from evil. If you say, I'm going to marry you one day, we're going to do these things one day, you make all these promises, yet let your yes be yes and your no be no. The reality is you can't fulfill these promises. You can't fulfill these promises. So don't make the promises. And don't use God as a scapegoat when you realize, man, I made all these promises and I can't keep them. And actually, I want to break up with her, but now I don't know how to. And this seems like a spiritual way to do it. Don't go down that road. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Proverbs 25, verse 14 says, like clouds and wind without rain is a man who boasts of a gift he does not give. If you are claiming and preparing and saying that you're going to give this gift to this woman, oh man, I'm going to be with you. No, I'm never going to leave you. No, you're my ride or die. And you post about her on Facebook and Instagram and all these things. And I know people like this, and it can be easy to say, okay, that's never going to happen to me. But honestly, this is for your own relationship too. Don't make promises you can't keep. Don't promise gifts you can't give. Hey, quick thing. As we're talking about dating, I realize that there's a good number of Christian people that want to be in a committed relationship, a meaningful relationship, and yet they just don't feel like there's any options. I was there, and I ended up meeting and connecting with my wife over a dating app. Some studies actually indicate that over 50% of couples meet online. The issue is that though there might be a lot of fish in the sea, a lot of them don't align with your values. That's why I want to tell you about today's sponsor, The Holy App. The Holy App is a Christian friends and dating app. They prioritize connecting you with people with similar beliefs and values and desire to be intentional. Here are just a few examples of some people that got on the Holy App. I heard about Holy from close friends and decided to try it. finally a place where conversations were more in-depth and less superficial. After a few months of dating, I met an incredibly interesting and talented person. We went on a few dates, and within 2 months, we started courting. In 6 months, we were engaged. This app cuts through all the noise, and it's apparent the intentionality with which the app was developed. I wish I found it sooner and hope it flourishes in connecting members of the church body. If you want to check it out, click the link in my description and download it today. Thanks to the Holy app for sponsoring this video. The next way that people use God in a toxic way in their relationship is they use God to make her compromise. It's usually always the girl, okay? They use God to make her compromise. They pose, these guys, they pose as some sort of spiritual authority. They say, you know what, I'm your spiritual leader. You know, I'm leading you in Bible study or maybe in prayer. But then there's a turn. And things get physical and boundaries are crossed. And then all of a sudden, this man who has posed himself as this spiritual authority is now, in a sense, in reality, taking advantage of this woman. It's similar to when like pastors and stuff, they use their power to get what they want. And these people that are subject to them, that are victims of them, their perspective of God is so twisted and so warped because of what this person did. They posed as a spiritual authority, but then the girl knew in her heart that they were just doing this to get what they wanted. And they're asking too, is this what God is like? And you see how screwed up and how messed up it is. What these guys often try to do is they try to act as a spiritual intermediary between the girl, the woman, and God. And that is never what we should be doing as men. That is never what we should be doing as men. We should be encouraging, especially in the dating phase, your relationship with Jesus. I want you to be solid in your faith with Jesus because I want God to be your number one, not me. I want God to be your number one. This next one I have seen quite a bit, and it goes along with the other one, but it's a little bit different. It's using God as a guilt trip. Using God as a guilt trip. Somebody comes up to you. Hopefully this has never happened to you, and the person says, God wants us to get married. God wants us to get married. And maybe you're just in the talking phase or maybe even the dating phase and somebody says this to you. God wants us to get married. What does this do? Okay, well, immediately you're speaking for God. Okay, you have the direct authority from God that says God wants us to get married, or also God doesn't want us to get married. This is the flip side to that, right? And then what is the other person left to do? Well, if they don't, beckon to your request, they're going against God. You see how harmful this is. You're not speaking for God, bro. You could say, you know what? I just sense that God is leading us into marriage. Okay, I mean, that's pretty wishy-washy language, but I understand what you're saying. But to be definitive about it and to use it kind of as a guilt trip because it's like, I know God wants us to date. And this girl's like, I don't want anything to do with you, but I guess if God says it, you see the spiritual authority thing come back into play. This is toxic. Now, unfortunately, this next one is all on the same theme, but using God to control her or him, but usually it's her. Acting like her God-given authority, like we said before, but then it goes beyond just kind of like, going beyond boundaries and stuff like that, physical boundaries, but it's also what she can wear, what she can do, where she can go. And sometimes, here's what I've noticed. Christian guys, they want to protect this woman that they really liked, right? They really like, and they want her to mold herself into someone that they aligns with their values, okay? So they don't want her going to the bar. They don't want her going to the club. They don't want her dressing like that, or they don't want her doing those things, right? And so then the guy will think, well, if I can create myself to be this authority in her life and say, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. Then I'm saving our relationship and I'm leading her in a good path. The problem is that this is all about control. This is all about control. It's not about her own volition or her own decision or her own faith. It's about how can I control her to mold her into the image of a woman that I want to get married to. Okay, here's the reality. What happens when you let go? What happens when you let go? Does she start talking to other guys? Does she start going to clubs? Does she start going to bars again? Does she start doing those things that you find problematic? Well, if she does, then man, that girl isn't for you, dude. So you trying to step in and control and using God to control her, that's not what you want. I know you really like this girl, obviously, but that's not the end result that's going to be good for you. That's going to lead to heartbreak in the end. Here's what you need to do as a boyfriend, okay? Because I'm not saying totally disconnect and don't say anything, and you know what, she's going to do what she's going to do, and if she's not the right one, then if she's the right one, she'll do everything perfectly, and she's not the right one, then she'll screw up, right? No, verbalize your expectations and make real boundaries. Okay, verbalize your expectations. If your expectations are, which should be pretty standard, but you know, hey, maybe these things need to be verbalized. I don't want you shouldn't be going to the club and dressed like that. Okay, that's just something that should not be going on in your relationship. And you explain why, and hopefully her faith would lead her to the point of like, oh, actually, I don't want to do that. But it's also like, put your foot down and say, it's not about controlling her. It's about establishing boundaries to say, hey, this is what I'm comfortable with, and this is what I'm uncomfortable with. Okay, because it's okay to have boundaries. It's okay to say, you know what? I don't want you texting other guys randomly, even if it's just friends. The thing is, establish and lay out those expectations, but it's not about controlling her, saying you cannot do this, but saying, if you do this, this is how I feel about it, and this is how I'm going to process, and this is where I see the relationship, if this is how you're acting. Okay, I think I'm going to do another video on some of the toxic ways that people use God in their relationship. I want to hear from you guys in the comments down below. What are some of the things that you have encountered or seen? I'm going to respond to your comments and make another whole video about this pretty soon. But first, let's get into why and how to invite God into your relationship in a healthy way, okay? One of the best things that I have really clung on to, even through marriage, is pray for your partner. Pray for your partner. When they're struggling or you're having a tough conversation or even an argument, take those breaths, take those moments to pray for your partner and just say, God, please comfort my partner. Please, give them what they need. Please help lead them, help guide them, help strengthen them, help grow them. Don't cease to do this, right? When you're dating, this is a great time to begin this habit. The second thing is speak life into who God wants them to be and who He made them to be, and not just in who you see in this moment. Maybe they struggle with impatience, or they struggle with anger, or they struggle with, any number of things, right? And you know that. Instead of saying and continuing to like reiterate that reality that they struggle with these things in those moments where you pick out, okay, wait, they're patient there. Speak to that. Man, thank you for your patience. Thank you for, I saw how you really held on and you didn't explode and you didn't let that anger take hold of you. And even though that was a really difficult situation, or I see how, this person really upset you, and yet I saw how you handled it and how self-controlled you were. Pick out those moments, even if they're small, and speak life into them, because those things will build. Those things will build. You think about it as you get into marriage. If you end up marrying this person, this is a habit you want to hold on to, because the reality is your partner isn't perfect, okay? Because you're not perfect. I hope you know that. You're not perfect at all, okay? So what would you like your partner to do? Would you like them to see every fault within you and speak to that and say, oh man, you really are just like an impatient person? Or you really, are just angry? Or you really just are unkind with people? Or do you want them to speak to and encourage you in those moments where, wow, you're so kind with that person. They seem to really be able to connect with you because you were really compassionate with them in that moment. Or, man, you really held that situation with a lot of self-control. Those are the things you want to hone into, because what you water will grow. What you water will grow. The other piece, and it goes along with these toxic ways you use God, because each of these different ways, you are kind of putting yourself in the place of God. If you want to have a healthy relationship, you want to make it easy for the other person to have God as their number one. You don't want to take the places of God. Trust me. And as much as it seems awesome to just be like bonded so tightly that we're our number one, man, you need God in the mix, because God is the one who holds us together spiritually, physically, emotionally, like mentally, all those things. If you don't have God, and then the person, your spouse, becomes all those things to you, you're going to be empty, because they don't have the capacity to fulfill those things for you. They don't have the capacity to give you satisfaction that you crave, or the acceptance and the security and the significance that you crave. You need that in God. So what are some ways that you can make it easy for her? Well, encourage her into Bible study. Encourage her into community. Don't try to corner her off from those things in her life. Push her into those things. Encourage her into those things so that when she is with you, then she is somebody that's secure in God already and doesn't need you and your affirming power to make her feel like she's worth something. Friends, I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, God bless.